Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Wednesday. We are in June.
Yes, it's good to be live with you and whoever's watching us today.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome to our audience, and hopefully, this will be a really good session,
Mhm.
especially for those entrepreneurs or those people that are really new to the sales process, right?
Right, right. Yes,
So, what
because
are
we
we
always
talking
think
about
we
today?
know stuff. We always think we know, and then we have to take a step back often. So,
Yes.
yeah. So today it's, ready, set, action for 3 tips to qualify leads and focus sales. So, as always, our goal is to give you short tips that you can actually implement this week, so that you can constantly move the bar in your progress. And we want to just talk about, lead qualification, customer profiles, and any strategies that we know of or we've worked with people on for really prioritizing leads and really looking at conversion and quality. So, that's where we're going to head today. Really, this is key, and the earlier you get this started, the better, and then you can keep honing and improving it. So, it's a good one for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that this session is probably mostly oriented towards those of us that are in solution selling,
True. True.
right?
Yep.
So if you're retail or a restaurant or something like that, I don't know that this will resonate with you
Mhm.
whatsoever. But it's more of those that are selling a solution, whether it's a product or a service
Mhm.
that solves a particular need.
Good point. Good point. I think the only thing it might apply to B2C would be if in partners, or maybe how you deal with, ambassadors or things like that. So this more of the B2B style. So you are correct. So
Yeah.
why don't you kick us off here? Do you have tip number 1 for us?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So I think, like with everything that we've been discussing as an entrepreneur or a leader, having a process in place is so very critical to setting yourself up for success. And it's no different when you're looking at how to um, really understand if this client or potential client in front of you is really going to fit
Hmm.
with your solution. So there's a lot of different formulas that are out there or processes, but I think that the basic one, and I've used it forever, is called BANT,
Okay.
and it's BANT is short for budget, authority, need, and timeline. And the great thing about solution sales, from my perspective, and one of the things I love the most, is having those discovery calls with
Hmm.
potential clients. I get to learn so much about them,
Hmm.
and whether they are, oops, sorry about that, whether they are a a good fit or whether they're not and they'll never use my services again. I
Hmm.
think that it's just, it's so, to me, I'm a curious person. So it's just so insightful to learn about different people's businesses, what they're doing right now and all that sort of thing. So I love discovery calls. And the BANT process was actually something that was invented by IBM back in the 50s or 60s.
Oh
So
wow.
it has been around forever,
Hmm.
and they really thought through, how do we make sure that this customer is qualified and is ready. I
Hmm.
think one of the first things that I talk about with my female entrepreneurs is that not everybody is going to understand that they have a need for your
Hmm.
product or service. They're getting along just fine without you right now, and
Right.
they don't know you exist, right?
Hmm.
So, how do you start to peel back that onion and really get them to also explore, can you be of benefit to them? You know,
Mhm.
is there value in having that next series of conversations with you to hopefully end up buying your product or service? So, the first thing to really talk through with your potential client is budget.
Mhm.
And it's not only understanding if they have a budget ready to go for your product or service, but what's the cost of how they're doing business right now? And how do you impact that cost? So, is there a return on investment for you to work together? Or the other side of the coin that I like to focus on is, what is the cost of inaction? Or,
Oh.
you hear about ROI all the time. I like to look at COI. What is the cost of not working together?
Mhm.
You know, what are those drawbacks that occur? Can they lose a competitive advantage? You know, can they continue to spend needless amounts of boatloads of money,
Mhm.
or time or whatever, or energy, or are they wearing down their staff because they're not helping them to be more efficient and effective in their day to day? So,
Yeah,
looking,
we talked last week about people waiting too long or trying to figure out when, right, to market or when to do these things. So that's exactly right what you just said.
yeah, yeah, that is so important. So, developing those questions that will help you kind of discover, right? That's why it's a discovery
Mhm.
call, helping you discover, and also that potential client discover, hey, there are holes in this process that, that are impacting my business
Mhm.
in X or Y ways. And so, walking through that. And then the A for authority. So, do they have the power themselves to purchase your product or solution? Or who are those stakeholders? A lot of times you can figure, okay, well, I'll just go to the CEO of
Mhm.
this medium sized company because, of course, they've got the decision making power, right?
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, the deal goes sideways because you did not loop in a really strong champion or someone that
Mhm.
they depend on
Right.
within their group to help them make those decisions. So if it's a
Definitely.
technology product and you're not looping in the CTO
Mhm.
or, someone in that technical side, to help explain to the CEO
Mhm.
how this is going to benefit them, then you could potentially lose it. So, understanding who those stakeholders are is so critical to
Yeah.
it and the roles that they play. And you can have multiple contacts that you are talking to about the same deal,
Mhm.
you know. And in fact, I almost encourage that because everyone is impacted differently depending on their role in the organization.
Yeah.
So,
And
you know,
sometimes I ask somebody instead of who's the decision maker or whatever that question is, I say, how do you make decisions within the company? Because
absolutely.
sometimes that tells me, what you just said. There's someone who, the actual signature person trusts and they won't do anything without that person's thing. Or you discover there's a board and you had no idea, the board had some, a level of power with this. So I do like trying to hit that as many ways as I can.
Yeah, yeah, or asking, if this process moves forward,
Mm-hmm.
and we're really thinking about partnering, what does your purchasing process look
Yep.
like? How many people need to be involved? Does it need to go through a procurement department or a purchasing department?
Right.
How long does that take to get a purchase order?
I
You
hate
know?
those part those that.
Oh, uh, they can really drag it out for such a
Yeah.
long period of time,
Hmm.
but understanding that then really helps you with the T that we'll get to on timeline, right? But understanding all of those moving parts is going to help you set up how is that communication going to continue over
Mhm.
the course of this cycle to get to the closed deal. Then the N in band is need. Do they have that need? So, like I said, they're getting a competitor in place right now that they're using. So you really have to talk about, mm, you know, what are some of the things that you wish that your current vendor or partner could do for you that they're
Mhm.
not doing right now, you know, to understand what that need is, or to to find out, they've had this problem for so long,
Mhm.
how has that been impacting them? And, are they at that point where they see that there is a need,
Mhm.
that they've got to make that change or they've got to add on this service or
Yeah.
whatever that situation is. So really uncovering that. And then the T in timeline. So not everybody is going to have the budget,
Mhm.
immediately. They may fall in love with what you do and they want to work with you, but it's just not in the cards for this calendar year because their budget's already been fully allocated. They've got no wiggle room, right?
Right.
So now
Mhm.
okay, my timeline is going to be next year potentially for this to come to fruition, but when do they start budgeting?
Yeah.
When do we need to circle back and maybe loop in other stakeholders at that time to get this process, kind of moved forward? And then how
Mhm.
long does that process take, right? From start to finish with the procurement. So you can kind of back into, okay, I need to start talking with you in August if we're going to do something in January, and
Mhm.
kind of figure out what that timeline is. So um, I think, in terms of the discovery call, it's important for you to kind of uh, pre-establish a list of questions. I
Mhm.
usually would use a 3 to 4 page needs assessment form. Not that I'm going to ask all those questions. It is not
Right.
an interrogation. Do not interrogate your potential client. You want to get as many of the questions answered in a
Mhm.
conversational style along the way, and then come back to it over a series of conversations
Right.
to the point where you can understand and they can understand if it makes sense to truly partner and move forward. So my homework for tip 1 would be to make sure you've got a list of questions.
Yeah.
Don't be just, winging it on
Mhm.
it, each call. Really sit down and think out, what do I need to understand about these 4 distinct areas from this
Mhm.
potential client that is going to let them know and let me know that we're a good fit to work together
Yeah.
and get that. And then if you have that, go through that and double check and see if there are ways to maybe change up the way you're asking the question. The
Right.
one word we're always told in sales to not use is why. Treat the word why as if it is a hot stove that you don't want to touch,
Mhm.
because why is a defensive word.
Hmm.
It's a question that brings on defense. Well,
See.
I have
Yeah.
to justify why I'm doing this to this
Mhm.
person. But
That's smart.
if you say it in different ways, like, I'm curious as to how you decided
Mhm.
that you would do X rather
Yeah.
than why are you doing it
Yeah.
X this way.
That's smart. That's very.
It just kind of reframes the question and puts it more in a conversational mode
Mhm.
rather than, again, that interrogation. So look at your questions and see, am I interrogating
Mhm.
or am I bringing curiosity and value with my questions?
Very nice. Very nice. Awesome. Well, cool. I like that. I just think too, like you spurred a couple of thoughts, and we'll move along with the next one. This is just such an important one though. Like I like to people like I have my questions, but you have to think about what you're getting from that question that will help you deliver a proposal or help you do whatever's next. So you do have to, you learn over time as your qualification calls, like make sure your questions are getting you the information that you can provide a solution. But I like to ask, what have you tried in the past? Like, what have you
Absolutely.
tried that's either worked or not worked? Because you
Yes.
learn a lot from that. You know, they've tried Google Ads, or they tried a social media agency, or they tried whatever. That's a really good one. And
Yeah.
then the other thing I like to try to sort of float out there at that point is, you know, sometimes money is how fast you want to move, right? You can
Yeah.
spend a minimal amount, you know, whatever the minimal amount of money is, and you're going to have a certain amount of growth. You could double that and move faster. So when you understand that, that helps you with your budget sort of conversation too. And it really helps you think when to, like you said, when to spend and you know, how to do that.
Yeah, and absolutely with the questions that you're writing down, see which one of those you can research and find out some
Mhm.
answers on, and then bring that into the conversation,
Right.
especially around timeline, because sometimes it can be milestones. Maybe somebody's coming up on their 100th year in business anniversary or something.
Mhm.
And so they want to do something different for that. If you're selling marketing services, then it's all hands on deck,
Right.
right? To really make that a spectacular type of celebration. So
Mhm.
understanding what those milestones are too, to kind of help you create that sense of urgency. Okay, if this is what's coming up, in 6 months, we need to start
Mhm.
by the end of next week. Can you make a decision that quickly, kind
Right,
of
right,
thing, you
right.
know,
Mhm.
for the ramp up time and everything else that's involved. So that's always important too.
Cool. Nice.
What about tip number two?
So, tip number two goes hand in hand with this lead generation and how do you, you know, do your sales and how you effectively move the needle, basically. But this is about identifying your ideal customer profile because obviously you want to talk to people that you can do the best work for, right? So, we've talked a bit about personas, we've talked a bit about, you know, like audience targeting and buyer's journey and all those things. So we have some other shows about that. And I also have some stuff about creating personas that we'll put in the chat later. But, you know, the ideal customer profile, like the benefits, like for this, like what is your benefit for this audience? So you really have to, you know, think about this up front. And so there's a couple ways to do it. Like personas tend to be more about, you know, they're these fictional representations of who you're targeting, right? Like CEO Sally and what's on her plate and what drives her and who she, you know, talks to for decision making and things like that. And then some of your customer profile gets a little deeper, right? Demographics, buying behaviors, maybe some pain points. It can be a little more elaborate
Yeah.
because you do want to talk to these people. And the best thing about this is that as you start working with these people, you can have a story that solves a problem that when you share it with this new person, it is really spot on and it's really powerful. So once you get a couple experiences and they're on target with your ideal customer profile, you can say, you know, when I worked with John at so and so company, here's how we did this and here's what we did. And here were some of the challenges. How powerful is that, right? How
Yeah.
powerful is it to say, here's what we did? Let me talk to you about that. I'm not going to, you know, I don't have to sell you. I'm telling you what we've
Yes.
done, which does it for me. So once you can get to that stage, it's so powerful. But really, you might refine this over time. You might to say broadly, I work with technology companies and B2B and, you know, national or regional. Well, over time, you might start to get a niche within technology companies, maybe software implementation or you know, IT or whatever it is that you start to really hone because you have great stories for that. It
Yeah.
really makes your sales process because getting the conversation, the first lead to talk to is really hard, right? It's a lot of
Yes.
work.
So hard.
Now,
Yeah.
referrals are a little easier, right? But referrals can be, you get all of these things easier when you have successful stories to tell. So make that part as easy as possible for you. So,
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Real world examples. You can find people you've worked with, define these, ideal customer profiles, ICP, if you love the acronyms, and then really just refine. So I think the homework for number two is to, brainstorm this, jot down some things. This is where I actually think you can use AI a little bit to talk about, hey, what are the pain points of a marketing director at this type of company? See what you find. I mean, you don't have to trust it 100%, but it might spur you into some ideas that help you create these profiles. So this is where I think AI can be an assistant for you, a research assistant. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. If you're going to Google anyway, you could use Gemini or chat, something like that for this. It's really the same kind of thing at that point. It's just somebody doing that search for you. Anyway, it's worth getting some of those initial thoughts. And then once you have, once you have the profile, you want to have a statement, a concise statement of, the attributes of your perfect customer. You know, John is a CFO at this type of company. He cares about budget, but it's more important that he can show his board success with marketing or something,
Yeah.
concise, right? And as
Yeah.
much as you can get in the short statement. And then, refine it over time of market research. You might find that there's an age group, there's, you know, education levels, there's associations. You just start to pull this together into a more concise profile.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, I think know um, that within your ideal clients, you're going to start to see patterns of different types of needs
Mm-hmm.
that come out of it, right? So that kind of leads into, my tip number three in
Oh,
terms of nurturing,
let's
because
hear it.
when you're nurturing and, you've gone through the discovery call, you identified that they are an ideal
Mm-hmm.
customer profile for you, but they're just not ready right now, right? Maybe the budget isn't
There
there.
you go.
Or maybe there's a new person that's going to be above them that is
Mm-hmm.
being hired right now, because we see that a lot these days where they
Mm-hmm.
can't really make a decision until that person is on board and
Mm-hmm.
kind of up to speed on things, right? So that can slow the process down.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different types of nurturing that needs to be involved, whether they've said it's going to be 2 months or 10 months,
Mm-hmm.
So how do you stay relevant? How do you stay top of mind? I think a lot of it, first of all, you need to understand how that customer likes to be communicated with,
Right.
whether
Sure.
it's email, phone calls, a text message now and then, that
Mm-hmm.
type of thing. And, plot a lot of your strategy towards that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're if you're nurturing, obviously email campaigns are the best and easiest way. If you're segmenting, so you can develop those email campaigns that are geared towards a particular need
Mm-hmm.
that you're supporting with a few of your potential clients, and what is that common need, and then developing the email sequence that's not only just going to be about talking about that and how you can help them,
Mm-hmm.
overcome that particular problem or challenge, but also how can you add value, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this with other in some of our other sessions too, but take it completely away from you. Talk about an upcoming event in their area that you found out about that you thought would be a great networking opportunity from them.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's in a different state than where you reside and you're not going to be there,
Right.
know,
Right.
just, letting them know that you're thinking of them and you're trying to, help them
And you
from,
understand what, where their space is, like what they're, yeah, that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, exactly. Or, an article that was published, and, I sell into the HR space. So the
Hmm.
Society for Human Resource Management, puts out a lot of great content. Nobody has time to read it.
Right.
So if you can just send them a link to one article that was
Hmm.
relevant to your conversation or relevant to what's happening in their space right now that has nothing to do with what you sell,
Right.
you know, um, give it to them and,
Hmm.
bring that value. And then um, I think that the other thing is, look at those automated workflows that can help you. So if they respond to the email,
Hmm.
then you've got them in a sequence that they responded to that email. Okay, this is the next thing I'm going to send them after
Hmm.
that. And really kind of, again, think through that process
Right.
of how you're going to stay in touch with them.
Hmm.
I call it the kind of like the Coca-Cola um, philosophy, where they're always in front of their buyers in some way,
Hmm.
shape, or form, and think about the ways that you can keep your brand in front as well. And that could be through newsletters, that could be through links to your blogs, that could be through a
Right.
whole list of different things that are not just, here's my solution, here's my
Mhm.
solution, here's my solution.
Yeah. And I would say definitely make sure that your content, whatever problems you're solving is consistent across all platforms. Like you might be doing sales emails and other outreach, but make sure, you're posting some stuff on Google My Business, a recent article. Make sure you have a LinkedIn sort of updated. Maybe you have a LinkedIn newsletter and maybe social media. Like in the process of sales, it's likely someone's going to peek or Google search or something
Yeah.
so make sure that aligns and it's not just empty. It'll look
Yes.
really confusing if that's the case.
Yes, absolutely. So I would think for homework for this particular tip, take a look at how your list is currently segmented if you're
Hmm.
using a CRM tool, and see if there's different ways that you might want to break it out even further,
Hmm.
because typically it is, you know, not a prospect, a client, it's like you have
Hmm.
them in those silos in a CRM tool, but you could break it out further, and then
Yeah.
really dig down deep with some personalization from there and
Hmm.
make adjustments. Like we're always saying, nothing's in stone.
Right.
You can recreate it and you can adjust it over time. So
Hmm.
have fun with it, experiment with it, see what works, and go from there.
Very good. Yes. Well, this is good. So, we've got three sort of tips for today, which is, look for, like how you're going to, what tools, how are you going to structure your lead qualification techniques? Like what process you use, what qualification methods you talked about. BANT, which I agree. It's one of my favorites. It's the most straightforward, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So make sure you understand what that looks like for you so that you can give yourself some structure as you grow. And then, look at your customer profile, start to hone that. Once again, over time, it continues to improve. And then to your last point, looking at personalized communication, how can you personalize that outreach? Whether it's based on the challenges that you see or, the things that you're learning in the field, or even what you think will benefit them sort of parallel to your world. So I think there's some homework that people got from here. And even, as always, there's a few things I'm going to hone because as I talk through them, I'm like, yeah, it's time to revisit some of this stuff and really make sure I'm on task with some of these things.
It's a constant evolution, and just, strap yourself in and go for the ride, right?
For sure, for sure. So, until next week, we'll have another exciting topic and some very specific actions for you to take. And that's it. We're looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, we thank you for tuning in today. Let us know any of your own experiences, as always.
Mhm.
we would love to have you share with us what's working, what's not working, and what we might be able to cover for you in a future session. So thank
Absolutely.
you.
All right. Until next week.